Hello, welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show today. I didn't start with my usual theme song yet and all that. There's a reason. As you know, when I got pulled the plug about a week and a half ago from YouTube, yeah, I learned how to use Twitch. Have not quite learned how to use Rumble yet. Still trying to figure that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a rebroadcast from Twitch of one of my videos to kind of get to add to the collection. And as I'm doing it, I will probably even add more commentary to what's been added up there. So I just wanted to let you know. And what we're going to do is we'll start and begin at the beginning. So enjoy this rebroadcast with additional commentary by yours truly. Take care, and we'll start right now. Okay, hold tight moment here. Let me do this. Okay, as I said, this is a rebroadcast from Twitch from last week. So I feel like it needs to be on YouTube as well, and that's why I'm doing a rebroadcast since it wasn't on YouTube when it was supposed to be on YouTube last week. So I'm playing, as I said, I'll be playing this because just to have added to the conversation if anybody is online and they want to drop by and give their takes on this. So what I'm going to do is we will get started on this from last week, and as I say, you'll see me occasionally if something comes up where there's something that I need to add more to this. you will hear me say something about that. So let me go and get started on this, and we will, you know, add to the discussion down the road. Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your humble host, Willy Bragg. I'm hoping that by Monday, or excuse me, today, today's Friday, I'm hoping today that I will have my YouTube channel restored. I checked today, and I was still, my status was still under suspension. I don't know what time I was suspended last Friday, but I am guessing whatever time I was suspended, whatever time the suspension started last Friday, will be the time that I guess I will be restored. Or would it be midnight Saturday? Would it be on sometime on Saturday? I don't know. So theoretically, sometime today, I imagine I should be back on YouTube, and I will continue to stream here on Twitch. Still trying to figure out Rumble. So anyway, I was going to wait till I return back to YouTube to do the Briahna Joy Gray, Cenk Uygur conversation. And I was like, that story's going to be kind of old by the time I get back on YouTube full time. So I will put it on YouTube when I get back. But I figured, what the hell? Let me go ahead and stream it today. Let me go ahead and get to this story, because I think it needs to be discussed while it's still relevant. So we'll just start right now, I guess, and I'll put it on probably 1.25 speed, just to get the conversation going fast enough to kind of keep pace, and I'll share my thoughts in between. So give me a quick brief moment here. We'll have everything set up. Okay. All right. And let's see. Let's get a full picture. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's get that speed. Where are we at? Normal speed. Let's do 1.25. Hopefully that'll do the trick. So let's get started right now. Cenk Uygur and Briahna Joy Gray, they have a discussion, and they try to clear the air. So here we go.
All right, welcome to the conversation. We're going to have a doozy today. Could be, well, let's see how it goes. Briahna Joy Gray is the host of the Bad Faith podcast. She's co-host on The Rising. She's also a host on Debrief on Call-In, former National Press Secretary for Bernie Sanders in 2020. And we're going to try to clear the air today in terms of what folks believe, what I believe, what she believes, what everybody believes. So this ought to be interesting. Briahna, welcome.
Thanks, Cenk. I appreciate you having me.
No problem. So let's keep it real right out of the gate. Some have called you the fake left, including me. Now, I'll tell you why I called you that, and then you tell me why I'm wrong. Okay? So it seemed that you had an alliance, which I don't know if you still have or not, and were like-minded with other fake leftists like Jimmy Dore, Glenn Greenwald, Tulsi Gabbard. First, Tulsi Gabbard hosting Tucker Carlson show on Friday. Do you still think that they have good intent? And
okay, Tulsi Gabbard substituting for Tucker Carlson this past Friday night. While I'm not the Tulsi Gabbard fan I used to be, she's disappointed me on some positions. I'm uncomfortable with some things she said. I'm going to let Briahna Joy Gray speak in a minute. Do I give a shit that Tulsi Gabbard substituted for Tucker Carlson? Not particularly.
And that they are not fake left, that they just happen to just pummel the left and agree with the right wing all the time, just coincidentally. I'm just curious what your take on that is, like.
I didn't catch it. I've never actually met or spoken to or corresponded with Tulsi Gabbard. I don't really have a relationship with her. Like a lot of people on the left, I really appreciated her standing up for Bernie in 2016. But honestly, haven't really followed her much since. So, I think part of my frustration is the characterization of me having an alliance with people that I rarely think about, much less, have a relationship with. I do have a relationship with Glenn. He was my boss at The Intercept. He's been supportive of me throughout my career. I think he's obviously very bright and thoughtful, and when we agree, and I find that he's one of the best advocates for whatever it is that we agree on. When we disagree, I have him on my show and we talk about it. And I have brought up some of the criticisms to him directly that people have about whether or not he pushes back sufficiently hard. He goes on Tucker Carlson and other similar shows. We probably will continue to disagree about how one should best handle those contentious situations, but I think there's a lot of room on the left for a lot of different people advocating for a lot of overlapping interests, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
Okay, so that's an interesting answer and a good answer. And guys, let me clarify from the beginning as well that I wouldn't have Jimmy Dore on this show. I think he's a total fraud and gets all of his money from the right wing and is one of the worst people in media.
Cenk, you started off in your early life as a Republican. You were cancel cultured by the Justice Democrats, an organization that you and Kyle Kalinske created. You created the Justice Democrats for them to fuck you over because of some shit you said in the 1990s when you were a Republican. You weren't even the worst kind of Republican. You were a libertarian-leaning Republican that was pro-business, a fiscal conservative. You didn't believe in the religious right nonsense. You weren't even a Christian. You were like the most casual, almost non-practicing Muslim at that time. This is prior to 9/11. You were as moderate as you could be as a Republican, and they still cancel culture your ass out. While you created the Young Turks and you did wonderful things with this network, creating a spot for independent media that created people like Briahna Joy Gray that you're talking to here. You continue, and you continue to take cringe positions. Now, I can guarantee you, all lefties have a cringe position here or there that they have taken, and myself included. I'm not guilty. I'm not innocent, but you were on record being anti-union, and you got shamed into unionizing TYT. You were supportive of capital punishment. Who changed your position on capital punishment? And opposition to capital punishment is a left-wing issue. It was Jimmy Dore that changed your position. In some ways, in many ways, you come across more right-wing than Jimmy Dore. I'm not making excuses for Jimmy Dore, but you do. I think you're to Jimmy Dore's right, even now.
Briahna is on the show because we're going to actually have a real conversation where we figure out what our opinions are instead of yelling at each other through other people, etc. online. So obviously, I think that you might have good faith, and I'm also being honest and saying might. Okay, so let's actually talk, and I've read some of your pieces, Briahna, that I totally agreed with. So let's get into what you think. I might come back to the Jimmys of the world, but I might not. But I hear you, and that's already an important clarification that you don't view it as a quote-unquote alliance, whatever that means. Okay.
Yeah, what do you mean by that, Cenk?
I think Jimmy is an obvious right winger now. He does these idiotic, videos about. Hold on. Let me explain. You asked a question and about how the vaccine. And he's skeptical of it because he's making money off that. Earlier, he was doing pro-vaccine.
I wasn't asking about Jimmy. I was.
Oh gosh. Okay. Vaccines. The former leader of the British Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, who is not a right winger, has reservations about the vaccine, and he doesn't believe in the lockdown that existed in the UK, and he believes that it shouldn't be mandatory to vaccinate people in the UK. That is his position. He's not a right winger. Here in America, there is a lockdown left. Here in America, they believe in wearing a mask as often as possible. Depends on who you are on the left. I've always been a centrist myself on that issue. I believe in taking the vaccine. I think if somebody who doesn't take the vaccine is a damn fool, but it still ought to be an individual's choice at the end of the day. But I think I think that they should take the vaccine, but I'm not for them being forced to. That's not a right-wing position. There are right-wingers that do favor an anti-vax politics, but there are lefties too. Jill Stein, I understand, is kind of an anti-vaxxer in some areas, and I voted for her. She was to the left of Hillary Clinton, by the way. You voted for a right-wing candidate, Hillary Clinton.
My question was about what you mean. What do you mean about me? Since we're here, I mean, I
no, that's what I was saying.
We'll talk to him about Jimmy, but what do you mean when you characterize me and Jimmy or me and whomever is having a quote unquote alliance?
Because in the days where he was doing force to vote and all that nonsense, and then we had a blow up with him over things that happened here, and I saw you and Katie Halper and Glenn Greenwald and all those folks constantly supporting Jimmy, and I thought, well, that's mental. So that's what I meant by it. But you're saying you're not necessarily allied with him.
Well, Jay,
I was going to take that at face value.
Well, I firmly believe in force the vote, and I support force the vote, as did Cornel West and Chris Hedges and Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske and a whole lot of people on the left, a lot of members of DSA and the chapter that I used to belong to, a lot of people across the left spectrum really understood that it's really important to force the vote on various issues, to expose folks who only performatively believe in various things. And I've seen you yourself talk since then about how important it is to get people to go ahead and vote for various issues that they, as Democrats, often espouse, that at the end of the day, hide behind whether it's parliamentarian or other kind of procedural factors to disguise the extent to which that they actually don't want to follow through on some of these policies because their donor base won't allow them to. So yes, I did and continue to believe and force the vote. It was frustrating to me that we weren't able to have a conversation at the time because it seemed like a lot of the pushback against force the vote had to do with a mistaken belief that Kevin McCarthy could be Speaker of the House, which of course was wrong and debunked and was promulgated by a lot of folks. And it could have been easily cleared up without a lot of the animus that ended up coming out of that moment. And I would appreciate that Sam Cedar was willing to come on that big podcast and have a prolonged, civilized conversation about it that I think ultimately had the potential to move us all forward instead of dividing the left community.
Okay, look, I didn't do a good job of starting this conversation off on the right foot, which I wanted to. But now that we're off on the wrong foot, something you just said really got under my skin. And it's something that you've mischaracterized before. You said since then about force the vote, as if I've changed my mind. I've been challenging the Democratic establishment for 20 straight years here. So the idea that like these Johnny-come-latelys come in and go, oh my God, we had this amazing idea. What if we challenge the Democrats to have a vote?
Cenk, you're being petty. She's not insulting what you've done. You've done a lot of good with the Young Turks. You created a space where the left can actually tackle the right, tackle the Republican right, and tackle the neoliberal right within the Democratic Party. And you've done a wonderful service. Nobody's taken that away from you. But you lost your way. And that Katzenberg money made you lose your way. It was not nonsense to do force a vote. What was nonsense is to sit there and be like little well-behaved little puppies wishing that the corporate Democrats are going to go and be nice to y'all. It doesn't work that way. It comes down to making them feel uncomfortable. The Tea Party had no problems making the Republican leadership feel uncomfortable. And that was what Justice Democrats was supposed to be about. A hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. A hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. You go in there. If it means that some of these Democrats become Republicans, so fucking be it. But here's the thing. Take over the fucking Democratic Party was your plan. To turn the Democratic Party into a goddamn Labor Party and take it away from being Republican light. You lost your way, Cenk. And Briahna Joy is just showing that to you right here in this interview. And you're acting like a spoiled little child.
That's the oldest thing in the book. And then you guys pretend like you came up with it. Then there's all this talk about change politics at TYT that's mental, not supported by one shred of evidence. And you did that on your show with Jordan Cherokee. What do you mean change politics? Change politics how? What are you talking about?
And with all due respect, I'm really confused. I certainly didn't need to take any credit away from the work that you've been doing in the left community for a very long time. So many people who listen to my show talk about how they were onboarded to the left because of watching shows like TYT, which at the time were, really unique in the Bread 2 space really defined what it means to be a leftist on YouTube. So I don't think this should be a conversation about who gets credit for what. For me personally, I didn't care who came up with Force the Vote. I actually heard of the idea first from watching Sam Cedar's show, and he mentioned that there was an idea that he thought was a good idea that came from Jimmy Dore, and that's what perked my ears up, because I knew there was some friction there between those two, and I thought, wow, if Sam is willing to say this about an idea that he heard about from Jimmy Dore, which of course Jimmy Dore didn't invent either, and he says this very openly, that he got it from the DSA, that it was a tactic that was listed in the 2019 DSA kind of strategic document. And
yes, I remember that Sam Cedar when he talked about Force the Vote, and he said it was a damn good idea. I mean, I remember him saying that. And I'm sometimes am a little tougher on Sam Cedar than I should be, but that was one of his better moments. And in fact, I unsubscribed from his channel for a while, and when it happened to catch my ear that he spoke favorably of Force the Vote, I resubscribed to Majority Report. Yeah, I listen to Majority Report and pick and choose what I like from Majority Report. I'm subscribed to Jimmy Dore, and I pick and choose what I like from Jimmy Dore. I mean, and I know it sounds crazy, but I can listen to Jimmy Dore and I can listen to Sam Cedar and pick and choose what I like, what each one has to say, because I'm politically in between their worldview.
Of course, like in the context of Force the Vote, we always talked about how this was a model that was used by suffragettes rather, in the early part of the last century, that having people vote on bills, even as they were voted down, really ginned up a lot of public interest in women's equality and those kinds of things. So yeah, I certainly don't think we as a left community should be talking about credit or who's first or anything like that. I think the goal should be for us to come together and try to figure out the best way strategically to go forward. But it's difficult to do that when people are so bogged down in their interpersonal animuses. And that's part of why I wanted to come here today, to really talk about why there seems to be so much negative energy.
Yeah, so but we have to break that down, because I'll tell you exactly how the history of that went. So Jimmy, at the time, we're still friends. No bad blood has happened at all. And old stuff from TYT. And at the time, I didn't know the old stuff from TYT. So he calls me up, force a vote. I say, okay, but that's, as a general thing, forcing a vote, perfectly great. On Medicare for all, perfectly great. Then later, I ask, hey, we're going to force it, and then what happens? Like, is there a progressive that's going to run against Nancy Pelosi? Because if there's no progressive, what are we doing? Making Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House? What earthly difference would it make?
Yeah, well, it won't make a fucking difference in the world. I don't care if Nancy Pelosi is not a Speaker of the House. She's as much of an enemy as Kevin McCarthy, and as much of an enemy as any corporate Democrat. It's a price she got to pay. You go and destroy her political career. You take that position of Speaker of the House away from her. If you're going to have a pandemic and the politicians in D.C. are not going to even try to do health care for all, you go and you make them feel uncomfortable. Oh, that's right wing to go make Nancy Pelosi feel uncomfortable by trying to push her to the left. Come on now. Alrighty, let me come back here for a moment. For those who are dropping by watching this is a rebroadcast from last week. I just wanted to say this is a rebroadcast from last week because I was off for a week on YouTube. I want to add to this that basically, yeah, as I said, I want to make it clear that this is a militant tactic, and I think the optics they did not like the optics. They didn't like the fact. I mean, it came from DSA, the idea, and Jimmy Dore took the idea from DSA, and he kind of offered it to the left. Let's go and try this tactic. And with this tactic, I think that maybe they associated Jimmy Dore with the tactic, and they thought it was bad optics. They thought it was impolite. They thought it was rude. And for a while, TYT were either smirking or discouraging or ignoring Medicare for All marches, like a lot of the larger online left groups. I don't have any. I'm not suspicious like they didn't want Medicare for all. They actually, in their minds, thought that protesting, being loud and rude about it was somehow going to cause us not to have Medicare for all. And as if being quiet about it all these years was going to give it to us. I mean, I just wanted to go and make that clear. So I'll let them go back at it. So hold tight.
He's just as conservative as Nancy Pelosi. And Jimmy didn't have an answer for that. None of you ever have an answer for that. And we're going to hold on. Let me explain the whole thing. And then, okay, we're going to go for Medicare for all. But wait a minute, there's a ton of things that are lower hanging fruit. And if you're going to go and do a spectacular force the vote, that's a big action. Let's try to get something that we can actually get.
And they didn't do it. They didn't do it with minimum wage increase. They didn't do it with protect the right to organize. They didn't do it with anything, with any substance to it. Pick a project, pick a reform to do it. It should have been done with Medicare for all. If it could have been done with Medicare for all, could have been at least with a minimum done with a $15 hour minimum wage. We didn't even get a $15 hour minimum wage. My gosh. And the Democrats are still called socialists by Republican morons out there. And people believe that the Democrats are socialists. When they're to the right of fucking Tories in the UK.
Medicare for all is not even on the agenda. I hate that it's not on the agenda, but I know what's doable and not doable. And at the time, idiots like Aaron Monte are, $15 minimum wage, that's already in the bag. We don't need to do that. And I'm like, wait, if you guys are going to be juvenile and you don't know how any of politics works, and you have no earthly idea how in the world you're going to get Medicare for all to pass, let alone things like $15 minimum wage, and you don't have an alternative to Pelosi, then why am I wasting my time? But I didn't say that publicly. I said it in a very gentle way. I don't think that's a good strategy. Then Jimmy blows up and goes nuclear and attacks us viciously for no goddamn reason. So when he does that, don't come at me and say, hey, there's a personal animus issue here. Well, you're in that fight, your ally came in and nuked everyone. Ryan Grimm, David Sirota, the best progressives in the country. He nukes them and he goes, what? What's with the personal animus?
Okay, all right. Now his temperament is not the best. I do agree. I saw Jimmy do it live in January in Raleigh. I didn't meet him in person. I met his wife, Stephanie. She seems nice. I know that his personality, his demeanor, he has a quick temper. And that's probably one of the things that he doesn't have going for him in a positive way and all of that. And okay, I get it. I understand that. That's one area where Hank would be correct. But it's still freaking frustrated that after all this, you still don't believe in force the vote. You still believe in just playing well-behaved little foot soldiers for Nancy Pelosi. That's mental.
So I am not accusing you of having personal animus. I think it's an accurate description. You called Aaron Monte an idiot. You just had your feelings about Jimmy Dore out on the table. I personally would prefer not to make those characterize people that way. I don't think that that's helpful. Obviously, you can do what you want. I can't control that. But I am articulating what I experienced, and I experienced a lot of animus, and I experienced it as animus when you referred to me as a fake leftist. I have never had any kind of negative interaction with you. I've never feuded with you privately or publicly. I've never said anything negative about you on the internet. So I was pretty hurtful.
You talked with Jordan about how we changed our politics at TYT.
Oh, you're just mad at Jordan Sheridan, Shank. You're just mad at, and you call Aaron Mattei an idiot. I don't agree with Aaron Mattei on everything, but you have a point of view about Syria, and so did Aaron Mattei. And Aaron Mattei's point of view of Syria was more correct than your position. Your position on Syria almost matched that of corporate Democrats and, God forbid, someone like John Bolton. What the fuck? Anyway.
Based on what? It changes to what?
I don't remember. Truthfully, a lot of people come on my show and they maintain, I confess I'm not a long time TYT viewer, so I would never say something like that, I don't think, because I don't have that perspective. Other people do come on my show and they say their opinions, and other people, I think, like Jordan has been in this universe for a much longer time than I have. He might have had the view that there's been a shift, and he's a guest, he's entitled to his opinion. I don't really have anything to say about that one way or the other. But I would like, if we can, keep this conversation focused on us and whatever your concerns were about me, since you're the one who called. I mean, I don't mean this accusatorily. I'm just trying to unpack this. You referred to me as a fake leftist, and I reached out to you about having a conversation about it because I didn't want this to explode, and I'm really unhappy with all of the disputes that have happened on the left. I wanted to clear the air and be able to have a direct conversation with you about whatever your concerns are about me. And I think it might be more productive to talk about our relationship now here, as opposed to all of these other issues that you have with other factors and other people that I can't speak for.
Yeah, so I agree with that. But again, the flow of the conversation is forcing me to say one last thing about the personal animus point. Look, Briahna, I'm trying to give you an earnest answer. So when Jimmy said horrible things about how he sexually harassed Anna, but even if you put that aside, and I don't know why on God's green earth.
Okay. I believe Jimmy. I don't believe Anna. I don't go with this Me Too nonsense. I believe in evidence. The DM toward Jimmy was the incident, and he brought it out into the open about that incident, about the nice new skirt. He was clowning on her. She was embarrassed. It was forgotten about. She brought it back up. And not only did she bring up that incident that everybody agreed happened, and it was forgotten about, she embellished it and said, well, you know, oh, he harassed me for years, you know, and I mean, you know, and I just don't believe that. I don't believe that. I really don't. And if that makes me a misogynist, I don't care. I don't believe that. Okay. Alrighty. Where am I? I'm back. I wanted to add one more caveat to that. One other reason I kind of was dismissive of her accusation was she's his superior. She was above him. She was not a subordinate under Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore was a subordinate at TYT. She is not a subordinate. He's a subordinate. He felt comfortable enough to talk about the nice new skirt incident. So I don't think he was trying to sexually harass her. I think he was inappropriate, and I think that I think he knows he was wrong to do it. You know, some people feel comfortable enough to go and make a little crude joke here and there. And I've seen Young Turks in the past where they had kind of gone with the gutter humor down to the level of early Howard Stern, people like that. Hey, and I like that Young Turks. I like Young Turks when, before the Dirtbag-Left was a thing, that they were sort of doing a Dirtbag-Left programming, like Who's Got the Camel Toe. They scrubbed that shit out, by the way. They scrubbed it out because now, you know, there are factions of the left that wants to be pearl clutchers and act like 1980s and 1990s evangelicals, PMRC style, you know, censorers and all of that. And that's not what the left is supposed to be about. But somehow, you know, the previous generation of the right's been doing this so long, it kind of set a foothold in our society where liberals have gotten into the game of doing cancel culture. The cancel culture thing started on the right a long time ago, and now liberals are engaging in it. It's a tactic that they created. You couldn't convince a lot of conservatives of that, but I mean, it's the damn truth. It's the way I see it. Because all that prudish attitudes is what turned me off from the right to begin with. And a few years ago, when I saw the liberals kind of acting the same way, you know, around 2014, 2015, 2016, it was just kind of like, y'all are doing the same thing. I almost wanted to give up politics then, but I'm going to go and let them continue. I just wanted to go and add that caveat in there. Give me a moment here. We'll continue. I mean, you know, and anyway.
He would put that aside. And he then accused everyone of work getting funded, including us, by Nancy Pelosi and the CIA.
Okay, that one he's a little far-fetched on. Yeah, I don't believe that BreadTube is being funded by the CIA. I've heard Jimmy Seward say that. I think he's wrong. I heard people like Caleb Moppin say that. I also think he's wrong. I don't believe that. I actually think that that's conspiracy poop, if I ever heard it there. And it's basically something that's kind of down the level of being an InfoWars mindset of the left. No, I don't believe that BreadTube, online left, are all a bunch of lackeys for the CIA. That's ridiculous. They don't give a damn about people on the online left. They don't. They really don't. The online left is still kind of too small for this, basically for the intelligence agency to really. They know it exists, but they don't think it's relevant enough to do anything.
When Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore were both part of the network, Sam and Michael Brooks, who I love, would attack Jimmy all the time. And I told them, don't do that. You're bringing needless personal animus into this. We've got to stick together. We agree with the issues. Don't make it personal. And I wouldn't even, and as much as I loved Michael, and now I honestly, looking back on it, regret it, I wouldn't have him on the show as long as he kept attacking Jimmy. Because I didn't want the personal animus. So, and I give you that as an example of me regulating on that, and with the guys that I love, Sam and Michael, right, who's now, of course, passed away. Okay? So I know for a fact, if Jimmy was saying, hey, Briahna Joy Gray is getting funded by Nancy Pelosi and might be working with the CIA, I'd say, Jimmy, you're massively out of bounds. And I'm not going to work with you, and I'm not going to be your ally in any goddamn thing, as long as you keep saying these insane, lunatic things. So that is what led me to believe that you were aligned with fake leftists. So I'm answering the question you were asking.
Just to be really clear, because I didn't insert myself into an argument that you and Jimmy were having.
You kept backing him over and over again.
But I'm sorry, wait a minute. I keep backing force the vote. I believe in force the vote, and I'm going to continue to back that kind of adversarial politics until the day I die. Whether Jimmy supports it, whether someone else supports it that you might not like, whether someone I respect deeply like Cornel West supports it, Chris Hedges supports it, and Crystal Ball supports it, all of these people were supporting this idea. And what was frustrating to me was how unable people were to engage with it on its substance, in part because they were so caught up in the ad hominems with Jimmy. So again, I can't speak to any of the stuff that you just talked about. I don't know who's funded by who. That's none of my business. I choose to judge people about the content of their opinions on the policies that I care about. So with respect to force the vote, I was frustrated with some of the backlash against David Sirota. I was also frustrated with David Sirota coming out of the gate a little timid on the issue. But I reached out to David Sirota. I talked to David Sirota on my show and his, and we worked it through, and I addressed all of the concerns he had about force the vote. And he ended up being one of the best advocates for force the vote and engaging, because we engaged. And we were able to add to the idea and say, you know what? The part about the Medicare for All is a largely performative vote to get the issue discussed in the context of this pandemic. But what concrete asks could we make? And David Sirota was instrumental in coming up with some of those asks, like getting Richie Neal off of the head of the Ways and Means Committee, like getting the PAYGO exemptions, which, although there's a lot of discussion about how the squad did get those, that wasn't in fact the case. And he enriched the idea because he was able to participate in the conversation. And I'm so grateful to him for that. And Ryan Grimm and I, despite having a lot of disagreement over this issue, were able to have a private conversation where we worked through our differences. He came on my show in bad faith. He was able to acknowledge some missteps that he had made about not pushing back in an interview that he had with Pramila Jayapal when she gave us an excuse for not doing force the vote. And remember, he's the only one who got an actual interview with the squad member about this. And when he asked her why she didn't support force the vote, she said because Kevin McCarthy could be Speaker of the House. Ryan Grimm knew that wasn't the case. He didn't push back at the time. He said he regrets doing that. We were able to make our apologies and move forward with our relationship. And I value Ryan deeply, again, as my former boss and someone from whom I've learned an enormous amount on the left. So I hope that a lot of people, including you and I, potentially maybe someday, I don't know, none of my business, you and Jimmy, people like Aaron, I think we all add to the left and are very valuable.
No, they do not add to the left.
I'm sorry, Jim, but when there's so many big dragons out there to slay, to spend all of this energy and have all of this anger worked up against people who care about Medicare for all, who care about a $15 minimum wage.
No, they don't. Briahna, this is my point to you. This is what I'm trying to get across, okay?
What Briahna Joy Gray just said right there in the last 2 or 3 minutes proved in itself, her statements, her words, proved Cenk Uygur is full of shit about her being a fake leftist. Because I think to be a true leftist, I'm not saying that if you're against force of vote that makes you a non-committed leftist. I think your judgment is flawed issue opposed forced to vote. But I think that any leftist worth their fiber will realize that you got to do something militant, and that is a militant action right there. It's a militant parliamentary action to go and force the vote, because nothing is being done except for private insurance companies and big pharma calling all the shots all the time. Whenever they discuss healthcare reform, the first concern is how can you protect the profits of the medical industrial complex, and providing medical care for people comes second. They don't care that much about treating the sick. I mean, they know it's an issue. It's a talking point, and they want to act like they care, but they're more concerned about protecting the profit of the the medical industrial complex. I would love to destroy the profit motive of the medical industrial complex. It should not apply. Some things are not to be left to profit. And the medical system, the delivery system here in the United States is one entity that should not be left to profit.
Okay, so now those forces are spending 98% of their energy backing right-wing talking points, backing Tucker Carlson, backing Donald Trump, backing the Republican Party. Never, ever.
Nonsense. Going on Tucker Carlson, when Tucker Carlson happens to be on the same side as most of the left on the issues that they will have Glenn Greenwald or Jimmy Dore or even a Tulsi Gabbard on, it's not backing the right wing. That is mental. It's not like Tucker Carlson has these folks up there and all of a sudden they're embracing the culture war crap that's the mainstream narrative on Fox News. Or they're calling for drone strikes against another country saying, yay, save that shit for Mark Levin or Sean Hannity. That's where that garbage belongs. The Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh talking points are not being discussed on Tucker Carlson when Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore and then Tulsi Gabbard are on. You may not like them being on Tucker Carlson, but they're not talking about those things. They're talking about foreign policy. Jimmy Dore always put in a good plug about Medicare for all on his show. Freeing Julian Assange. I remember when lefties were in favor of freeing Julian Assange, and all of a sudden, now there's division on the left about Julian Assange. What the fuck, Cenk? No, they're not right-wing. If you can go on one of the largest news shows, talk shows in the country, and there's no dispute that Tucker Carlson is the biggest game in town. You don't have to like him saying this. And I'm not sitting there saying he's wonderful. When he was in college, he belonged to the fucking Jesse Helms Society. Jesse Helms, who is a vile human being when he was alive. So there's no love I have for Tucker Carlson. But when you have people who are associated with the left, you may call them right wing, but they're associated with the left. They're not doing the Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin's exclusively on right wing media. Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald are on left wing media. They may not be on the Young Turks these days. They may not be on Majority Report on David Pakman anymore, but they're on the Vanguard. You know, they're on Crystal Call and Friends, what Glenn Greenwald was, I believe, a year ago. You know, they're on Primo Radical. They're on some of these other programs like that. Some small programs. And the thing about it is, you may not like Jimmy Dore, and I have people that I'm friends with on the left that hates his guts. But unlike the Young Turks and Majority Report, and as much as I like Kyle, I'm going to include him in this, none of them give a lot of space for the new up-and-coming people on the online left. I'm going to add something to this. And what I want to add with regard to Jimmy Dore is this basically. And that's when people said that he never criticizes Donald Trump. When Donald Trump was threatening to use the Insurrection Act during the summer of 2020 against protesters, he was outraged on his program, and he called Donald Trump a pussy. I mean, he basically denounced Donald Trump. He lost 1,000 subscribers of people, the so-called, maybe the people who were, there are right-leaning people that do like Jimmy Dore. And that's probably the one thing that the Cenk Uygurs of the world are correct about in regard to Jimmy Dore, that he's got a limited, a conservative leaning or base that do like him. But sometimes, they'll say something, and people will go and unsubscribe. And he apparently lost about 1,000 subscribers. I mean, there are people in conservative media that have actually said certain things that I had to admire them for. I'm not exactly a fan of the radical libertarian. What was his name? Adam Kokesh, I think that's his name. But he went and worried the hell and trolled the hell out of assholes like Mark Levin and trolled the hell out of assholes like Steven Crowder. I mean, I think that's great. I'm not a fan of Tom Woods as far as the economics. I'm just not an Austrian when it comes. I don't believe in Austrian economics. I'm just not an anarcho-capitalist. And anybody who's libertarian in the audience, I just don't believe in that kind of economics. I have respect for libertarians. I just don't believe in libertarian economics, and especially the radical kind, what's called Austrian economics. We can have a debate about it, but I just don't believe in it. And I wouldn't expect anybody to just sit there and embrace socialism full force either. Okay, we can have our disagreements, but the thing about Tom Woods have said things in the past that somebody introduced me to Tom Woods and apparently Mark Levin is too chicken shit to go on his show. And it's because Tom Woods have actually said points that the left would be inclined to agree with, some of the anti-war stuff and things like that. Same thing with even the Southern Adventure, Jack Hunter. He says some cringy things over the years, but he says some very, very correct thing against neocons as well. So I'm just saying, sometimes you'll get people on the left that will hear a voice that will be considered more conservative, and they will go and listen to another point of view, and they're not embracing everything that person may be saying, but they may be agreeing, hey, whatever. And same thing with Jimmy Dore. And I'm sure that there are probably some mainstream liberal people that maybe a conservative may like that's to Jimmy Dore's right, that the liberals actually think is a liberal. But anyway, I'll get back to this. Jimmy Dore will have people on small independent content makers on the online left on his show. And none of them are sounding like fucking little young Ben Shapiro's. None of them are sounding like that. So come off of it.
Ever criticizing them, spending all their energy attacking Nina Turner and David Schroeder and Ryan Grimm, the best progressives in the country.
Okay, I will agree with you about Nina Turner. Now, when it comes to the Nina Turner Jimmy Dore dispute, I am saddened that they are disputing with each other, because I actually like Nina Turner, and I know some of the Jimmy Dore fans are going to hate me for saying that. and I like Jimmy Dore, which some of the Nina Turner fans are going to hate me for saying that. I'm weird like that, I guess, but that's where I stand. Anyway.
And the squad, the only people who are not taking corporate PAC money, the only people that are even trying a little bit, and they spend all their energy doing that, and you go, oh, they're great leftists. No, they're not. And they're getting, literally, some of them, like Glenn Greenwald, are getting paid by Peter Thiel through Rumble. They're getting paid.
Rumble doesn't censor. And I believe Peter Thiel, who founded Rumble, is a Canadian liberal who is not a right-winger, started Rumble because he was a free speech absolutist. I remember when free speech was the mantra of the left at one time. And I even remember you, Cenk. You were in favor of free speech, you and Anna, at one time. And you kind of got fuzzy on the issue. I expect no better from Sam Cedar in that regard. He's been forthright being pro-censorship. And as much as I like the Humanist Report, he's kind of upfront about supporting censorship too. The one strike I got against him. Otherwise, I do like the Humanist Report. Nomiki Konst is the loudest on censorship, which is why I don't like her that much. But, Glenn Greenwald never claimed to be a leftist. He never claimed to be an ultra-leftist. Let me put it that way. He was always kind of center-left, more of a Democrat than anything else, a card-carrying ACLU member. Not a right-winger. I don't know too many right-wingers that would leave the United States to marry a young brown gay man, and that's what he did, being gay himself, who became his husband, David Miranda, who is a Trotskyist, who belonged to a far-left party in Brazil called the Party for Socialism and Liberty, which is a Trotskyist organization in the parliament in Brazil. You got a Jewish gay man married to a brown gay man in Brazil, whose lives are threatened by Jair Bolsonaro. And you're going to call them right wing? That's just nuts. I want to add one more thing to this. Lula da Silva is a free man today in Brazil because of Glenn Greenwald. Lula da Silva becoming president of Brazil may come into reality because of Glenn Greenwald and Glenn Greenwald's role in having Lula da Silva being freed from prison. Glenn Greenwald and David Miranda live in fear or have to live with concerns that their lives are in danger in Brazil. On their property, they have 24/7 security protection because the Bolsonaro regime, the Bolsonaro government, declared them both a threat. They are always concerned that their lives are in danger. And Jair Bolsonaro favors dictatorship. I just wanted to clarify that. It doesn't sound a whole lot like a right-winger to me. But I'm sure I'll be reminded by various people that I like even, that he's somehow right-wing. I'm just not convinced of it. So let's continue.
The right-wing Patreon supporters. So when you aid an event and you make it seem like, oh, when Jimmy tells you that the real problem is progressives and not Republicans, that he's on the left.
Jimmy Dore criticizes Republicans. He's criticized former President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney many a times. He's criticized Donald Trump. He just doesn't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome. That's the thing right there. I mean, he has criticized Republican politicians in the past. But you know what, Cenk? It's the easiest thing to do is to criticize Republicans. I have my show here. I do it myself. Marjorie Taylor Greene is horrible. Lauren Boebert is horrible. Matt Gaetz, horrible. I mean, they're crazy people. One American News Network, horrible. I'm glad to see it go out of business. I mean, what the right wing has to offer in this country: tax cuts for the wealthy, more culture war, union busting, and either getting rid of welfare or means testing to make sure that there's resentment, to create a stirring among the population, for people to distrust government. And then some of them will claim that they're anti-war now because the Democrats are now for war. But as soon as the Republicans get back, the military-industrial complex will continue doing what they've been doing and everything. So anyway, I actually want to contribute to that a statement too when it comes to the anti-war movement, because a lot of it is selective contrarianism, because a lot of people were anti-war during the Bush-Cheney years on the liberal left, because it was the Bush-Cheney people who were for war. And the same thing is happening under Trump, when it was Trump, and Trump had some positions on foreign policy that was a little less anti-intervention, a little less pro-interventionist. Some of those same liberals who were against war started to sound very, very pro-interventionism all of a sudden. And I, this goes on both sides. I do think that there are true believers on the left. The majority of the left who are anti-war, I do believe, are anti-war. You got to be worried about a corrupt leadership in the anti-war movement, because some of them will sell out. Now on the right, you got to be worried about certain politicians, because they'll do it. They will give you a lot of rhetoric. They'll give you a lot of rhetoric about it when the Democrats are in charge, but when push comes to shove, you see their true colors. I'll give you a couple of examples myself. I've actually I remembered when Joe Biden was pulling the troops out of Afghanistan. And it's really the only thing Joe Biden's done that I think was awesome. One of the few things he's done was awesome. Easing the restrictions on Venezuela was also a positive thing. I think he should just get rid of the sanctions altogether from Venezuela. But that's part of the reason why we're seeing gas prices stabilize and being lower at the pump. A good thing, by the way. Also, it pisses off the neocons, icing on the cake. But thing about it is that when Biden was pulling the troops out of Afghanistan, what did Lauren Boebert wanted to do? She had that little sour look on her face, and that little bitch decided to go and talk about how she's going to go and write articles of impeachment against President Biden. I mean, and that's the kind of thing that they like to do. I mean, they're hypocrites. A lot of them are hypocrites. Don't believe it when they say it. I just wanted to go and make that clear. I'll let them continue. I'm sorry. Oh, hold on. Let me add one more point. Rand Paul, people like Ron Paul, does not apply to them. They are the anti-war, quote unquote, anti-war right people that I do agree, that I do respect rather, and they do mean it. But when Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert start uttering this crap, don't believe them. That's basically what I'm saying. So anyway, I will let them get back to it. Okay. All right. Oh.
For helping that deception.
Well, Cenk, for one, you should really talk to Jimmy. I am not a ventriloquist dummy for Jimmy Dore. He, I'm sure, would be open and happy to talk to you. I just cannot speak for other people, and I really wish you would respect me enough to engage with me as the human being that's sitting in front of you, and not asking me to speak for these random men who I'm not accountable for. I'm not their mom. I'm not in league with them or in allegiance with them. I respect them for the ways that they advance the issues that I want to advance and protect. And when I disagree with them, I disagree with them about the specific issues that I disagree with them on, and I don't make it personal. And I think that's really good advice for everybody in this community.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to ask me specifically, yes, I do think that they are, depending on the issue, there's a lot of really good faith engagement happening. So I don't see it, and I respect that you obviously see this differently. I don't see critiquing the few people that we have that are in positions of power to actually advocate for us as attacking them or trying to bring them down. When I say something like the progressives in Congress, because of the narrow margin in the House, could have had any number of force the vote moments over the course of this last 18 months, that they could have. You mentioned the $15 minimum wage. During force the vote, when AOC said to Justin Jackson that she was going to reserve her political capital for a $15 minimum wage, part of why I didn't have quite the same reaction as Jimmy, I was very frustrated, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't quite willing at that point to kind of go all in on the fraud squad characterization. Because I thought, well, maybe she knows something that we don't know, and maybe when the time comes, she really will, and they will, all of them together, I don't mean to put it all on her, but all of them together will vote as a block and hold up and must pass legislation like the American Rescue Plan to make sure, if not a $15 minimum wage, something significant that was on the cutting room floor got into the bill. They all had the power to be the mansions and cinemas of the left, right? And when that moment passed, it didn't happen. When no one really called out the parliamentarian trick in stripping at 15 from the bill at the time, when Pramila Jayapal was reported to have whipped the votes to make sure the Progressive Caucus did not, in fact, hold up the bill to fight for the issues that we sent them to Congress for, I think it's absolutely incumbent on us to call that out and push them to be better. Because if they're not fighting for us while they're in there, if they're not maximizing their ability to use their leverage for the most vulnerable people in this country, I don't know what they're there for.
I absolutely agree. I do. I absolutely agree. I do. Hold on a second here. I'll get back to that in a second. But what I'm going to say is that it's just sad that that this is the mentality. He's acting just like an obnoxious child, and it really is frustrating that that he has to act like this. Honestly, I mean, I used to think better of Cenk Uygur, but anyway, what I'm going to do is we're going to get back to this. Hold on. We'll get back to this.
Every time I try to get to talk to you about you and about policy, you say something that's maddening, that forces me to clarify, and then we get back into the same muck. Okay, so in this case, two things. You framed it as, I don't know, holding people accountable is not attacking them. Okay, so let's be very clear on what we've done and what the definitions are. We have held those same individuals accountable massively. Okay, I did a video saying I'm burning all my bridges with all the Just Democrats, a group I formed and named, to try to get them to take action on things we could actually win on. Like,
yeah, they kicked you out. They chased you out of that group. They treated you like shit. They did the woke skull thing on you, Cenk.
Like $15 minimum wage. I burned my bridge with Bernie Sanders, forcing him to, and we did a petition, our viewers sent in videos, and it worked, and it forced Bernie's hand to have a vote on $15 minimum wage. And then we found out who the 8 Democrats were that voted against the $15 minimum wage, and we found out that those were 2 of the top allies for Joe Biden, the 2 senators from Delaware. So that was actually a force of vote that was incredibly effective in at least finding out who the bad guys are. We got no help from anyone else because they were busy with, their, as you would say, personal animus. But our audience was enough, and we did it anyway. So when you say it as if I'm opposed to it, are you? Like, I am philosophically massively in favor.
With all due respect, and people can play back the tape, nothing I said was meant as an attack. And I think that you're personalizing this and inserting yourself into this. All I was talking about was what my feeling. I was using an example to demonstrate why I don't think that criticizing the squad is attacking the squad. And so what you're saying is you also criticize the squad. I think that's great. So we understand each other. We understand, because we've both done it, that having a critique of leftists in Congress, even if they're the best that we've got, that critique is necessary to try to maximize and push them in the direction that we think as voters and as media figures they should go. So we're actually in agreement here, and I'm not really sure what the dispute is.
Yeah, no, because you said, all right, forget what you said. You framed it as holding them accountable is attacking them. What I was trying to get to, and it sucks. Hold on.
I was saying the opposite, though, Cenk. I'm saying holding them accountable is not attacking them, and you agree with me. So I guess what's the problem?
No, so the problem is because this is forcing me to delineate the difference. When Jimmy says in a speech, let's go to, hold on.
Jimmy,
no, I have to give you the distinction.
This is Jimmy Dore Derangement Syndrome 101. Good gosh.
I have to give you the distinction between attack and hold accountable. No, Briahna, hold on. You have to understand it. When he says let's go to AOC's house and make her afraid of us physically, that's attacking. Saying hey, we need you to have this vote on $15 minimum wage because we actually think it can pass, and here's our strategy for it, is holding accountable. When Pramila Jayapal says, hey, let's decouple infrastructure build and Build Back Better, we say, hey, no, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to lose Build Back Better. That's holding accountable. So there were things that were out of bounds that we're attacking. So I just want to be clear with the audience and with you. Holding accountable is, we agree, is definitely not attacking. There needs to be lines that you don't cross.
So if you want to be very specific, I personally do believe that protesting in front of politicians' houses is legitimate. I think it's legitimate.
I think it's legitimate. But you don't say, let's go make her afraid of us.
I think you should make politicians afraid. Absolutely. When Kirsten Sinema was followed into the bathroom by the activists at Arizona State University, I thought that was fucking based. And she walked into that stall, and I'm gonna tell you, I hope that was the most uncomfortable shit she's ever taken in her life. I hope that was the most unpleasant bathroom stall visit she ever had. I hope that would just be burned in her mind for the rest of her life, considering her opposition to the important provisions in Build Back Better, considering her opposition toward the U.S. government negotiating for lower drug prices, considering that she used to be in the Green Party, for crying out loud, when she was younger, and now she goes and gives a little affectionate pat on Mitch McConnell's back, and she's buddy with that asshole. Okay, I want to clarify one thing here, and about this, because I want to have it stated that this whole following a politician around and all of that, and because some people have there are concerns that some people will feel like their lives are in danger or whatever. Now, I don't want anybody's lives to be in danger. I don't want any physical harm to be imposed on anyone, not even the worst asshole politician around, because I am opposed to that sort of thing. But I am thinking in terms of trolling the hell out of them, annoying the shit out of these people. I mean, that is all we got. You know, just that's basically, I think that's what he meant by making them feel uncomfortable. Making them feel uncomfortable, making them be like, well, damn, I'll never hear the end of it, you know? Like, for example, when some activists went and started shouting at George W. Bush, Mark Preissner, for example, shouting at George W. Bush at some event, you lied, and did that, and he got escorted out of the building. I think it was in Los Angeles last year. I mean, that was awesome. I mean, and right now, occasionally George W. Bush gets trolled by people occasionally. I mean, so and some of the other, bad actors. Gosh, that's not the right word. Some of the other goons, some of the other ghouls, some of these other neocons that were involved with all this crap that happened under Bush Cheney. These people need to be held accountable. And so, yes, trolling, probably the better way to put it is to troll the hell out of these people. Troll them. And I think that's the way you make these politicians feel uncomfortable. You know, just they don't do right. You know, these activists will follow you around and they'll annoy the shit out of you. And I have no problem with that. So I'm going to get back to my thing, and I'll let y'all and I will comment some more momentarily. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jimmy Dore's right. You make these politicians feel uncomfortable. Absolutely. In France, the politicians are afraid of the people. In the United States, we are afraid of the politicians, and we're afraid of the government. And that's the story. That's the way it is. I mean, we're even afraid to say what we want to say, because I mean, right now I'm in the past. I'm just commenting here. I'm afraid that when I put this on YouTube, that YouTube might find something in this algorithm and say, "Well, he said this. Let's go and silence him again. So that's what, we need a yellow vest movement, and we need to force the vote on everything.
By going to our house.
When I had Chris Hedges on my show probably last fall, it was one of my favorite episodes ever, and he talked about the politics of fear. And he talked about how if you have a social movement and you want it to be effective, you have to have people afraid of the consequences of not listening to you. And I think that what we've seen over the course of the Biden administration, even before, but we had the largest protest movement in American history that was just plainly ignored and disregarded by the party that was supposed to be championing the interests of the people who were in the streets. That they weren't really afraid because ultimately there were no consequences there. And I don't mean threats of physical violence. What I mean by afraid is that there was going to be some tangible consequence to not listening to you. My argument in the summer of 2020 was there needed to be a credible campaign to withhold one's vote until some very clear, popular policies were committed to by Joe Biden. I think we might live in a different world where, if that had been the case. I'd say the same thing is true now over whatever election happens in 2024 and with these midterm elections coming up. And I also think it means being willing to say Nancy Pelosi, who is the most powerful woman in Congress, person in Congress, probably the most powerful Democrat in the country, she doesn't get to be Speaker of the House if she doesn't turn over some things to the progressives. They had power to do that. And before she was in office, before she was elected, AOC said, there's no reason why Nancy Pelosi should be Speaker of the House. I wouldn't vote for Nancy to be Speaker of the House. And so something very concrete that could have happened. You say, does it matter if Hakeem Jeffries is Speaker? It matters to Nancy Pelosi. It matters to Nancy Pelosi. And demonstrating a willingness to actually put your money where your mouth is and deeply inconvenience the establishment of the Democratic Party is a much less performative action, I would argue, than asking Bernie Sanders to have an amendment to put a $50 minimum wage back in the bill, when we all know that taking it out of the bill was the real moment of tension point, right? Because putting it back in the bill takes 60 votes. Pulling it out only takes, voting on it in the bill takes 50 votes, which is why the parliamentarian is so crucial. David Zerud has been talking about this because the exact same thing, as I'm sure you know, just happened with this latest inflation bill, where Bernie Sanders, again, the amendment king, is trying to get all of these things back in the bill, but Chuck Schumer is stripping them out because the parliamentarian said so, instead of just forcing a vote with them in, despite what the parliamentarian says, turns a 50-vote issue into a 60-vote issue, and provides cover for all these Democrats who would say, yeah, sure, I want it back in the bill, without ever having any risk to their donor base that it's going to happen. So why am I saying all this? I'm just wanting to really make it clear. I think we are broadly in agreement. People have different tactics. I understand that Jimmy's tone is not necessarily what I choose. It's not what you choose, and it's not what you like. But I also respect that he channels a lot of the deep anger and resentment that so many people who are failing and being crushed by poverty, by medical debt, by cancer, by all kinds of ailments. Those people are looking at people like you and I, who are sitting here calmly at our desks talking about these things, in a way that can feel academic to people who are really suffering, and they see something in Jimmy. And if Jimmy is attracting a certain kind of audience and pulling certain people to the left who resonates with them, I think that's a good thing. And if people don't like that, I think they can go other places. I respect
this entire audience to the right.
No, he's not. I mean, okay. He's got some conservatives that like him because he goes and he's a little bit louder about jabbing at the Democrats. I don't particularly like Brooklyn Dad Defiant. That's an understatement. But Brooklyn Dad Defiant says something about Jimmy Dore that is true. And it's probably the most true thing that somebody that's a shit lib said about Jimmy Dore, that is probably the most true thing, accusation. It's not that he's a right-winger. It's the fact that Jimmy Dore is a left-winger. And in Brooklyn Dad Defiant's eyes, a very toxic left-winger, which ought to be a compliment to Jimmy, considering it's Brooklyn Dad Defiant. And that basically is this. He thinks that basically Jimmy Dore is an accelerationist. Jimmy Dore is obsessed with Movement for People's Party. He wants that political party to be the vehicle that disaffected Democrats, dare I say disaffected Republicans even, go to create that left-wing party when there is a crisis, an economic crisis, and let's say the economy goes under, something that would be equivalent to, let's say, the Socialist Party of America or the Communist Party or something like that in the early 20th century, some mass party like that. The Progressive Party of Robert La Follette, the Progressive Party of Henry Wallace in 1948. He's wanting to see something of that stature back in the political equation, and he's maybe a bit delusional, and this is where I think he thinks it's going to be the People's Party. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the People's Party. At best, it could be the Green Party. That it could be that vehicle. That's my interpretation of things. But who knows? Who knows what the future will bring? But anyway, I will let them continue.
Anyway, I can't bear to talk about these guys anymore. Glenn Greenwald kissing Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones' ass is not pulling anyone to the left.
You should talk to him.
Yeah, that liar.
Really people come you're both welcome on bad faith.
Okay.
I had, my friend Nathan Robinson had similar concerns about Glenn, which I respected, and so I had them both on to talk about it on bad faith. It was one of our best conversations.
Okay, so let's go to our agreements. Okay, so let's be.
You're not interested in right-wing talking points when you got your own. And Cenk, remember, you got corporate Democrat money like Jeffrey Katzenberg, dirty Clinton money. Remember, the Young Turks also is contaminated with Buddy Roemer money. Buddy Roemer is a Republican. You got right-wing money coming into the Young Turks too.
Clear. So let's try to go through as many agreements as we can, as quickly as we can. So, for example, you said, hey, the key moment is when Schumer takes it out. Totally agree. That's why we tried to put the $15 minimum wage pressure on before. And as I told all of our allies in Congress, they're lying. Democratic leadership is a bunch of liars. And when they tell you they're going to do $15 minimum wage, I guarantee you it's a lie. And they didn't believe me. And so I tried to get them to take action before Schumer took it out of the bill. But we didn't succeed. And they didn't believe it. So let's first, obvious question. It looks like you and I agree completely. Democratic leadership, totally full of crap, 100% conservative, totally in service of their donors, and you should never trust them. And progressives should have their heads examined if they do.
We agree. Base. The truest thing you said in this whole interview.
Do we agree with that?
That the progressives shouldn't trust the establishment Dems?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, of course. Great. Perfect. Okay, and that's a huge, important thing. We both agree to that. That's great. Okay, so holding the progressives accountable. Totally agree. I think Jayapal has been an absolute disaster. I think they're.
Tell me about it. Welcoming Chantel Brown into the Progressive Caucus when she works. Okay, hold on a second here. I am going to go and scroll through that real quick because I made some comments about Chantel Brown that YouTube might call a conspiracy theory. So I will say this with regard to Chantel Brown, her joining the Progressive Caucus when she was a member of the New Democrat Coalition, which is a group for corporate Democrats. Absolutely just dreadful. And the fact that the Progressive Caucus welcomed her with opening arms when really the Progressive Caucus should have told Chantel Brown, we don't want you. Fuck off. That's what they should have told her. The fact that they went and embraced her and basically not want anything to do with Nina Turner or just gave Nina Turner the cold shoulder tells me that the Progressive Caucus is useless. I don't have any use for the Progressive Caucus anymore. It's hard as to believe, and I'm going to scroll through that because I don't want to get. And actually, I'm going to scroll through. It's a very long thing, so I'm going to scroll through a little bit of this, and so we'll continue this. I had to scroll that out because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube again. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. I'll get back to this. So.
Dude, I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying so hard not to argue with you. Please stop trying to perceive every word out of my mouth as somehow a criticism.
Namiki Constance opinions over Briahna Joy Gray's. That's a sad. Oh, hold on a second.
There is a lot of ambiguity about where the money is going, and the concern is arming these specific Nazis. In the same way that the United States, yes, we have Nazis and white supremacists, there is a robust conversation about whether or not there's a real problem with the number of white supremacists in our police force. That is absolutely a legitimate question to see. We had this conversation around 1/6. It's part of the reason why people were let into the Capitol, because they had sympathetic people in the security team around the White House. That is absolutely a legitimate question to ask if our tax dollars, our weapons are going to people who don't have our interests at heart. That is the issue. And if you think the answer is no, fine, substantiate it, talk about it, engage with the issue, and make your case. That's all
Briahna,
I'm saying. This is not my area of expertise. I'm literally not even espousing a point of view. But I think the left is stronger when we're able to talk about these things instead of just assuming that people are secretly rooting for Vladimir Putin because they have an historical perspective or what's going on on the ground.
Reporting is wrong. Their reporting is lies. Okay.
It's hard to believe that Cenk Uygur values Nomiki Constant's opinions over Briahna Joy Gray's. That's a sad state of affairs.
And then you make it 50-50. But Briahna, I don't know if you're doing it on purpose or not, but you did, what you just did there was a sleight of hand in that conversation. You started talking about how, oh, well, there's small faction Nazis, but I don't know, does the money go to Nazis? Maybe we don't send money to...
Okay, I wanted to, I scroll really quick. That part, they were talking about the Ukraine-Russian crisis, and Briahna Joy Gray talked about how, the United States are kind of collaborating with Nazis, and Cenk Uygur was talking about, well, there are neo-Nazis in Idaho and places like that, which is a very weak point. We're not talking about a couple of privates with some swastika tattoos that's a member of the Ukrainian army. We're talking about officers. We're talking about ministers in the government, members of the parliament. We're talking about people we're talking about streets and boulevards. They're named after Stefan Bandera, who is a hero, a cultural hero in Ukraine, a man who collaborated with Hitler. We're talking about a country where homophobia was actually a bigger problem in Ukraine itself over Russia, which Russia is horrible at. They're horrible on that question too, where anti-Semitism is a serious problem within Ukraine. It's always been a serious problem. It's always been a serious problem in Eastern Europe anyway. But Ukraine is a special case. And anyway, I just wanted to go and clarify that when I streamed through, and that's what they were talking about. So anyway, we'll let them continue.
In Ukraine, I'm worried about defense contractors just taking out money, and that's why I'm worried about the spending of the money. It's corporate pork, etc., right? But maybe it's going to Nazis makes it seem like, hey, that's a 50-50 president. And then you, hold on. Then you said, well, hey, I'm concerned about cops and being far-right and Nazis here in America on January 6th. As if I'm like, I'm not concerned about that. I'm also concerned about that. I don't know why did you bring that into a conversation about our disagreement?
You are seriously so oppositional. Every time I say something I believe, you interpret it as me saying you don't believe that. It's so weird. If I say my makeup brush is black, you're like, well, I also have a makeup brush. Dude, like, I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying so hard not to argue with you. Please stop trying to perceive every word out of my mouth as somehow a criticism of you or trying to undermine you. I'm sincerely trying to be here in the spirit of reparation. And it's
okay.
I don't necessarily feel from you right now that you have a desire to repair. It seems a little bit like point scoring. And that's, I don't know, it makes me a little sad. I don't see why there has to be this.
It is point scoring. You hit the nail on the head, Briahna. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what he's doing. He is point scoring. He's got a score to settle what he referred to, I call myself Dirtbag-Leftist here on this channel. He calls the gray zone types and the Jimmy Dore to the left types. And I'm sure he refers to you as this, and the crystal balls and the Kyle Kalinskis of the world, and all of these folks, he refers to them as dirtbag degenerates. I heard him use that term a few months ago. That's what he's doing. He's trying to go and smear a free-thinking section of the left out there that, and not all these people that I'm mentioning are necessarily in solidarity with each other either. But the people he thinks are troublemaking on the left, he's trying to be a smear merchant. So that's what it comes down to.
Yes. Look, all right, Briahna, let's go to something you did recently as an example, okay? And you talk, and I think it's a good example. So you talked about how when Marjorie Taylor Greene says defund the FBI, hey, maybe that's not such a bad point, okay? So now that's a good place where, again, subtlety and nuance are going to be really, really important, okay? So if I saw your segment where you were talking about, hey, look, the FBI has this terrible history of oppressing the powerless in favor of the powerful. That's totally true. We totally agree. Okay, and if you're getting agreement from the right wing, now this is important, but in an earnest way, about police law enforcement reform, what did we talk about? What did I say earlier? Take yes for an answer, right? So far, okay, that's good, agreed, right? But then I think it's incumbent to clarify what the right wing doesn't actually mean it. It's not like you're going to get Marjorie Taylor. Hold on, let me finish and then you respond. It's not like you're going to get Marjorie Taylor Greene to go, oh my God, you're so right. We should do police reform. These cops are being so abusive towards African Americans. No, what she's trying to say is if we get in charge, we're not going to let them hold us accountable. We're going to destroy rule of law by getting rid of anyone at the FBI who doesn't agree with us politically. Don't you see that?
So if you watch my clip, the first sentence and also the last paragraph is all about exactly that. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. But then I'm going to show a clip, a tweet of Marjorie Taylor Greene agreeing with you, and then I want to get your reaction to it. So I'm not doing this without you. We didn't do it on the show, go ha-ha, or anything like that. And in fact, I'm genuinely curious what your reaction to it. So let's look at that.
This is ridiculous. I mean, the point scoring that he's doing it's a low. It's a low that it's just a damn low that he it's just something that's it's just horrible. I mean, that he's really gone downhill. I mean, this is Cenk at his worst. If I may say so myself, this is Cenk at his worst. It's sad. So let's continue.
FBI, she says our government has become an institution that protects and serves elites while the people suffer under the American last ruling class. We must defund the FBI, dismantle the Department of Justice, and gut the agencies of political biases and persecutions. I believe in the people. So what I see there, and I'm curious what you see, is her pretending that the right wing is populist and that they're doing this on behalf of the American people. When in reality, what she's saying is, if we get back in charge, there ain't going to be no rule of law. We're going to take out the Department of Justice. We're going to take out the FBI. Then they're going to run roughshod. I do not agree to that at all. So
I agree that that's probably Marjorie Taylor Greene's intention. I think that that's what Briahna Joy Gray would agree to. Don't try to paint Briahna Joy Gray as some kind of simp for the politics of Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're nothing alike. And how dare you go and do that, associate her with that? Honestly, that's even more low than your attacks, against some of the other commentators that you engaged in, Cenk.
So I'm curious what your take on this.
I think it's pretty funny since millions of leftists, thousands of leftists, she also seems to have not watched the video because I doubt that she would retweet a video where she was called a broken clock who's only right twice a day and a bad faith actor. So I am a co-host of Rising, and Rising's audience is a much more conservative audience than what you have here at TYT or what I have at Bad Faith. And when you're speaking to people who are not there for you, Robbie's been on the show much longer than I have, and the audience is largely there for him. They're very libertarian in their bent. They are anti-establishment. They're frustrated with corporate parties, but they've definitely leaned right, especially on cultural issues. I find that I'm able to get more engagement with the video and more engagement with my points that I think are substantive. I spent most of my video talking about communism, now the FBI has been an enemy of the left. To meet them where they are and say, look, the left is as concerned, more concerned about the issues than the right. And here's the real people who are advocating for this and not in a self-interested way. And the point I make at the end of the video is, I don't believe Marjorie Taylor Greene is acting in good faith, but I believe you might be. And to the extent that you, the audience, is acting in good faith, here's what we should do. Come over to the left. I'm addressing conservative audiences or kind of partyless audiences, people who are quote-unquote persuadable voters. I'm not doing this for Marjorie Taylor Greene's notice or interest. I'm doing it because she is, in fact, obviously a bad faith actor. But you have to address the people who see her as acting in good faith. That's cause. Just because I know her and she is a bad actor, but some of the people in the audience are people who genuinely believe what she's saying. So the point is to say, okay, let me just accept on face value that you really are into this. Let me tell you what the FBI really is, and let's develop a plan on my own turf about how to address this issue. I talked to the boys over at the Vanguard earlier today, and they raised some interesting points about how, if she is able to set the agenda, her version of getting rid of the FBI is going to be all about protecting, yes, elite power, the way that the FBI has always done, and avoiding accountability. I think that's a really legitimate point. That is why instead of, I don't know, doing a long day attacking me on the internet, what I would love for leftists to be doing is to think critically and get our historians and our theorists together and think critically about what it would look like to either restructure or abolish the FBI so that it really did become about accountability for elites instead of harassing leftists and other marginalized groups as it has done historically.
But, Briahna, do you get that when, at a moment when the FBI is finally doing something right and holding an elite, like an ex-president, accountable on his massive law-breaking, that when you say Marjorie Taylor Greene is right, that it appears to some, I understand your point that you're making about reaching out to the right-wing audience that's watching. I totally get it. And from time to time, I think that makes sense politically, okay? But again, we need nuance here. But in this time, it allows them to say, you see that? Reasonable people on the left agree with us. The FBI is political, and they're targeting Donald Trump based on politics.
I didn't think
I know, and that's why I'm asking
about Marjorie Taylor Greene in that tweet. In Marjorie Taylor Greene's quote tweet, she doesn't even make that argument.
But you know that's the argument she's saying in this context.
Okay,
she tweeted about how they fund the FBI right after the raid. You know that's what it's about. What I'm asking, Briahna, is do you see how it might be perceived as helping their talking point that the FBI is targeting Trump unfairly and for political reasons?
The right is exploiting this moment for what they want, and I'm exploiting this moment for what I want. That's all I can do. I, Briahna Joy Gray, with my small platform and 60,000 YouTube subscribers, are not platforming or influencing Marjorie Taylor Greene as the Congresswoman's behavior. I think that's laughable. What I think is very irresponsible is for the left not to take advantage of the genuine interest that many people have across the political spectrum in holding the FBI accountable. Cops sometimes arrest bad guys and do the right thing. Sometimes cops stop a rape in progress and capture someone who's been drunk driving before they can hurt someone. Sometimes that happens. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to advocate for overwhelming police reform, abolishment, or whatever it is, because that's the right thing to do. And we need to be coming up with structural alternatives to do the things that cops are supposed to be doing, while not covering for all of the misconduct and the structural problems with the police force just because sometimes they behave right. And I think the same thing with the FBI. It is completely cogent to say, I believe Donald Trump should be held accountable for whatever crime he might have committed. At the same time that you say the organization that's undertaking the search has a credibility issue because it spent 85% of its resources, as I talk about in my clip, 85% of its time going after people like Muhammad Ali, Elvis Presley, and Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, and only 15% of its time going after the Ku Klux Klan.
But
as beautifully phrased and said, absolutely, and I couldn't have said it better myself. That's just. She was so eloquent in how she put that. How the hell? And we're going to find out how Cenk is going to disagree and try to be a contrarian about this. That's exactly what's going to happen here. But the thing about it is that they're, as reprehensible as Marjorie Taylor Greene is, and she's one of the most awful people in the country, there are people who voted for Marjorie Taylor Greene that didn't necessarily have her views 100%. That there are people out there that might not agree with everything that Marjorie Taylor Greene has to say, or agree with the extreme bigotry and intolerance and fanaticism that she embraces. So maybe there are, maybe anybody who listens to Marjorie Taylor Greene and will agree on that stop clock scenario where Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying something that Briahna Joy Gray or Cenk Uygur could be in full agreement on. Maybe it's the responsibility of the left to let those folks know that Marjorie Taylor Greene's full of shit and to come on over to the left. And I think that is the point that Briahna Joy Gray was trying to make.
Today, they're going after Donald Trump. So then that gets to the issue of genuine, whether they're genuine or not. And I think this is...
Of course they're not. And I said that many times on my radar.
Okay, but let's break that down. And this is a good moment. This is a good thing to, I think, end on. So, look, if I sense the right wing is genuine, they're actually voting with us. So, for example, they're anti-war. They're saying the president needs to get congressional authorization, and they voted that way. Great, no problem. A vote's a vote. It's as genuine as it gets, right? So I say yes to that. But if they say, hey, Jake, I care about law enforcement reform right when Donald Trump's getting busted by law enforcement, and by the way, if we win, I'm not going to do any of the reform you want. Instead, I'm going to make it way worse. I go, well, that's not genuine, and this is not a moment that I want to help them with their completely disingenuous concern about law enforcement?
That's actually kind of a good point, because when the Biden administration came up with the with this Ministry of Truth, the Disinformation Governance Board, and a lot of people, a lot of liberal lefties either dismissed it or think it was mildly positive. The problem with this whole Disinformation Governance Board, if they don't think about it, is what happens when you have Ron DeSantis appointing somebody with the vengeful politics that motherfucker has. What happens when he puts somebody in there that's going to head this Ministry of Truth? You see what happened with me, and I'm not trying to make myself a martyr or a victim. You seen what happened with me on YouTube. All they're going to have to, they're going to start looking at small content makers and large content makers alike and see what they have to say. Start shutting us all down and suing us and putting us in jail for our words. It's a nightmare scenario. So, Cenk, on that one, I will agree with you.
I think that's an excellent point. You know how I would nail them on this? Wouldn't it be incredible if, in response to this moment, the left actually drafted a plan that they could vote on to actually reform the FBI in a meaningful way? Wouldn't it be incredible if, instead of letting Marjorie Taylor Greene stomp and posture on the internet about this sort of thing, that we called her bluff with a piece of legislation that would actually do what the left thinks would be a good response right now, a response that creates accountability for Donald Trump, but which also cuts at the meat of some of the skepticism that the right has about whether or not the FBI can conduct an impartial investigation? That's what I would really love to see in this moment. Call her to the mat, force the vote, make her prove whether or not she is a good faith actor or a bad faith actor. I think that would be much more productive in this context than sitting around just saying online she's a bad faith actor. Well, we all know that, but the people who support her, or the people who are open to having this conversation, they don't know that. And there's only one way they can know that. It's by good faith actors getting in there and actually doing what we think should be done, instead of just criticizing and complaining and critiquing others.
Yeah, we have a slight difference on strategy there. I would not do that vote on the FBI now, because it would distract everyone and make it seem like the FBI is doing a fraudulent investigation of Trump. But I would have done the same thing on election reform. When the Trump people screamed about election reform, progressives have wanted election reform forever. I would have done a bill that said, okay, great, you want election reform, let's do it, right? And I would have put them to a vote. But there, of course, we have the common opponent we always have, which is corporate Democrats, and they wouldn't allow those kind of real votes if their life depended on it. Okay, last thing on this then is, look, I get concerned that right-wing populism is given credibility when I think it's overwhelmingly disingenuous.
It is very disingenuous when you can't have, when you hear people trying to talk the populist talk on the right, and then you can't get them to support the concept of a labor union or even a public option on healthcare. And all right-wing populism is basically Reaganomics. That's protectionist. That's not right-wing populism. That's just more the same bullshit.
So, I have that concern on a nuclear level with Glenn and the others, but I'm putting them aside. I'm taking you as a good faith actor here and say, aren't you worried that they're not at all populist? I mean, at the end of the day, Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, all these guys are talking about their favorite philosopher, Alexander Dugin in Russia, who believes in going back to the medieval ages, violence and dictatorship. Curtis Yarwood here in America, who believes in going to dictatorship and monarchies and ending democracy. That their populism isn't populism at all, and framing it that way is greatly counterproductive.
Of course, and I'll say this again. Nothing I ever say, nothing in my approach is ever intended to be directed at any of the people who are on TV screens or in Congress. I believe they're all bad faith actors. Steve Bannon, Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, all of them, right? But the people who like them and support them, some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And my goal when I do radars, and often the theme of my radar is, hey, look at this right-wing populist saying X, Y, and Z. Here's why they're acting in bad faith and why you should be on the left. That is a common theme, not just in this radar, but if you go back through them, Rising has a list of all of our radars in a row, so you can go through all of Ryan's or all of Robbie's or all of mine or whatever and look back through them. You know, I did the same thing around the Fourth Amendment, the case where Border Patrol, our agents are now able to search your house, and it's implicates 85% of Americans because the borders are supposed to live within a border. You know, I say, hey, look, you guys care about search and seizure. You guys care about, your privacy rights. Don't you have a concern about this? And they're like, oh yeah, heck, why aren't more conservatives talking about this? This is a big deal for me. So that's the thing that I do all the time. And it's because I'm not talking to Sam Alito I'm not talking to Tucker Carlson. I'm trying to talk to people who have been fooled by these folks. And maybe you're of the belief that every single person who watches the Tucker Carlson show is a deplorable and beyond the pale, and
No,
I respect that opinion. Okay, great. But my thought is it's the most popular TV show in America, and that gives me pause. And I'm trying to figure out why it is that people are attracted to him and take the parts of it out that are not fascistic, that are not racist, that are not bigoted, where he's diagnosing legitimate problems about America and has something about his approach that is galvanizing to people, and do that plus the good stuff. And explain to people, hey, like my Tucker Carlson radar that went viral because people kind of, I believe, purposely misunderstood it, is to say, I know what I see when I see Tucker. I see what you see. I see the bigotry. I see the open kind of white nationalism. But here's how he's subtle in his approach. Subtle enough, not to you and me, but subtle enough to the people who like him that he has plausible deniability. So let me explain it to you in a way that you can understand. Because saying dog whistle, saying these terms that we understand and we believe in, many people on the right just don't. And if you look at the comments of that video, look at the comments of the Marjorie Taylor Greene video, you might be pleasantly surprised about how many people are like, oh, I hate Briahna. She's a communist. I hate her. Da-da-da. But she makes a good point here. I can't disagree. This is an issue. And slowly but surely, there are an increasing number of people who see the left as not just a bunch of crazy blue hair freaks or whatever, not blue hair, but as people who are legitimately engaging with issues that are priorities to them. That's my approach. I respect it if people don't like my approach or choose different approaches. I think a lot of different approaches work in this space. Different people need different things. All I want is the freedom to be able to do it without feeling like I'm fielding quite so much friendly fire from people that I prefer to be fighting alongside.
Yeah, so Briahna, this super last thing, because that's a great thing to end on. Look, I think it looks like you and I agree that we need to try to pull a lot of the right wing to the left. And I think that's fairly obvious. It's a good strategy. Corporate Democrats don't want to do it because they don't really care, because they're already on the right. Long story on that. But we agree on, let's pull them to the left, right? So, and in places where we agree, like, for example, Article 5 Convention, I agree with Louis Gohmert. Okay, if Louis Gohmert people want to come over, great. Come over and help us get money out of politics, okay? Now, he doesn't necessarily agree with that, but he agrees with the process of the convention. So we agree on that. What I'm worried about, and that's what I'm trying to understand, that's like maybe the unifying theme of this conversation, is that when people go on Tucker Carlson and they're not challenging him, all they're doing is agreeing.
Again, I don't want to sound like I'm defending Tucker Carlson, because I'm not. But Tucker Carlson is not having Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore on the show saying, those brown Mexican people, send them back over the borders. Those Jews, the queers, they're not saying these things. The dark-skinned people, they're not saying these things. And Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore are not sitting there, oh, gee whiz, Tucker, we agree with you on those things. They're not even saying, things like, gosh, those terrible socialists trying to take over our healthcare system and trying to turn us into Venezuela. And you're not hearing stuff like that from Glenn Greenwald or Jimmy Dore on the show. You may hear it from Dave Rubin. You're not going to hear it from Glenn Greenwald or Jimmy Dore, because Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald are not Dave Rubin. They're not Dave Rubin rightists. They are not. They're not Tim Pool's types. They clearly are not. They have positions that I disagree with occasionally. I disagree with Cenk occasionally. I disagree with Bree occasionally. I disagree with Sam Cedar occasionally. Kyle occasionally. Chapo Trap House occasionally. The whole gamut. Doesn't make them all a bunch of right-wingers either. Some of these people I like better than others, personality-wise. Some of them, their personalities, I think that maybe majority of them wants to see the country go further left. And it's all ego. Anyway.
That it looks like they're trying to pull the left wing to the right and get them to agree to other Tucker Carlson positions, white nationalism, immigrants are dirty, they're going to replace us, etc. And that they never clarify. And it looks to us.
Again, I don't think that they argue about the immigration colorization problem. Both Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore are married to people with brown skin. What the hell are you talking about, Cenk?
And that's why I called him the big left. And I will, having had this nuanced, important conversation with you, I will take you out of that category. I understand you're trying to come at it from good faith. I will not take the others that you take in good faith at all. And that's a fine and healthy disagreement. But the question is, I'm deeply concerned that they're helping the Tucker Carlsons of the world pull people on the left to the right wing.
They're not. They're not. They may be planting a seed in some MAGA in the audience, and maybe somebody will be driven to the left or take a more moderate position or maybe think about a position here and there. I know that when Bernie Sanders ran for president, some people who were Republicans were no longer Republicans. And I know that some people have called people like Shoe on Head right wing, and actually it's turned out that Shoe on Head has actually cured people who are on the path toward the alt-right, have actually been proven to have walked away from that type of worldview by listening to Shoe on Head. Yet there are people out there that say she's right wing. She's not.
Are you not concerned about that?
Yeah, sometimes. And I spoke to Glenn directly about it on my show with Nathan Robinson, and we had a good conversation about it. And he acknowledged that he could do more to push back and to make his own positions clear. That was, about a year ago, not quite. And I think it's probably worth revisiting the conversation with him. And so I'll shoot him an email after I get off of here. And I invite you to that conversation if you're interested.
No, I'm not, because I don't think he's in good faith at all. So in that year, Briahna, look at that.
Oh my gosh. I hate to say it, but Cenk Uygur is a total jackass. I've lost respect for him with Force the Vote last year. That when he decided not to do Force the Vote last year, that was a very first big wake up call about TYT right there. It's the $20 million from Katzenberg wasn't exactly wonderful, but that was right there. A red flag. And then the whole shit going on between Aaron Minte and Jimmy Dore and all of that last summer, that also soured me a little bit. And this shit right here that he put Briahna Joy Gray through. Slandering her in the past few months. Slandering her character. Anyway, we'll get back.
The evidence. I know you say you're trying to get along with everybody, but evidence matters. You had that conversation a year ago, and since then, all he's done is pro Tucker Carlson, pro Alex Jones propaganda, and he has not pulled them 1 inch to the left. Whoever thought he was on the left, he has helped pull them to Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones, and that's not productive. That's not left wing.
Oh, that's interesting. So Glenn in particular has never identified as a leftist. So I don't know that he necessarily has an audience. I think a lot of us in the left really respect his advocacy for, Julian Assange and some of these kind of speech and First Amendment journalist type issues. He is a First Amendment lawyer, and that's his area of expertise. But he's never broadly described himself as like a leftist or a socialist or anything like that. So to the extent that he had a left audience that he's pulling right, I'm a little skeptical of that claim. Although, I agree with some others. Like I haven't listened to the Alex Jones interview. I saw some commentary about it. I don't love the idea of, I should say this. I don't see the utility necessarily in engaging with someone like Alex Jones. He's not in a position of power in terms of making policy or really directing the Republican Party.
Alex Jones is entertaining, even though he's full of shit. He is entertaining. He's a clown to laugh at.
I understand he has a huge audience, so there's always some utility in getting your ideas out on a large audience. But I have read some of the criticisms of how that interview went, and I look forward to talking to Glenn about them. But I don't think it's productive. I'm sorry. I don't expect other people to feel this way, but I do not have a close relationship with Jimmy, although I appreciated his advocacy around Force the Vote, and I believe he really deeply cared about that. I do have a personal relationship with Glenn, so I would prefer to have my conversation with him one-on-one before I make commentary about an interview, which also I haven't even watched or listened to yet.
No, that part is totally fair. But you have seen in the last year, he hasn't pulled one person to the left, and all he's done is agree with the right wing. But
I know. There's been some pretty good clips about issues like Julian Assange that regularly happen on Fox News now.
Yeah.
And what I like for a lot of the ones that I've seen to go a little bit differently and bring the pushback a little bit more on Tucker Carlson, absolutely, and I've said that to him. But I don't know. I would have to comb through all of the content with a finer tooth comb to make a claim about whether or not it's more helpful than not.
Yeah, you know? and so of course I agree with him on Julian Assange, but that's exactly my point. Trump was in charge for 4 years, and he didn't do anything about Julian Assange because all their populism is fake.
Actually, I think it could have been possible for Donald Trump to pardon Julian Assange, but apparently Mitch McConnell, and this is a criticism of Trump. Trump ought to not be listening to people like Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell. This is why I say people like Mitch McConnell. And I've said this about George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and people like that. And those motherfuckers are more dangerous than Donald Trump is. And Ron DeSantis is more dangerous than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is terrible, bad news, but, there's been a lot of people around and from both parties that created the Donald Trump persona that we're all stuck with today. It's counterproductive to go and blame the actual left for contributing to Trumpism. That's almost down the level of Hillary Clinton blaming Bernie Bros for Donald Trump winning in 2016, which is wrong.
The only thing he did was pass a $2 trillion tax cut for the rich.
Well, somebody made the point to me today. I don't know if it's actually true, but somebody said that Marjorie Taylor Greene was, in fact, critical of treatment of Assange while Trump was still in office. And, it's interesting. It's interesting whether or not this is a question, right? Are they going to keep these stances up when their person is in power? I think it might be easier to say yes to something like Assange than something like the FBI. I think that's probably the case. But, I think it's our job, again, to not just have speculation, but to create conditions where we can prove that by forcing the vote on a bill, let's say, about FBI reform or abolishment and things like that. And I look forward, now that we've had this conversation, to people on the left who have much more knowledge and policy knowledge and stuff than I to maybe start pursuing something like that.
All right. Briahna Joy Gray, host of Bad Faith Podcast. She's co-host on The Rising. She's host of the Debrief on Call-In. Thank you for joining us and having this important conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cenk. I appreciate it. I look forward to hosting with Bad Faith someday.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube members.
Okay. All right. I am back. So there was that. I put y'all through an hour of Cenk, but on the positive side, you went through an hour of Briahna Joy Gray. And, as I said, I just think that I think it's just mean-spirited of him to sit there and to attack her. I mean, and she's been getting a lot of crap. I mean, she doesn't need to necessarily be pitied. I mean, she's a smart woman, and she basically, she basically destroyed him in that hour with her calm demeanor and her intelligence and her charm. They're both lawyers. I mean, who you rather have representing you if you're in trouble in the courtroom, Cenk Uygur or Briahna Joy Gray? I think we all know the answer. So that's where I'm standing right now. So anyway, what I was going to say right now, I'm hoping that today my YouTube will be restored. And tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 p.m. Pacific, on the Pacific Coast, we'll be interviewing Radical Leftist Agenda, who is a Twitch streamer, left-wing Twitch streamer, cool young lady, really based, and she has a wonderful program that she hosts and has a good following that she's building up right now. So we'll be chatting tomorrow, and that should be on YouTube itself. So just go on my YouTube channel, and I will put down the link. I'll put down the link for YouTube. I'll put down the link for the YouTube right now. So you can go ahead and be sure to go ahead and check us out on tomorrow afternoon. Give me a moment here, and I'm typing the link. It's for the Willy Bragg Show, and it is at youtube.com, American Social Democracy. I would have changed the URL, but I had trouble trying to change the URL. So that's what all that was about. But here it is. This is the link, youtube.com, American Social Democracy, and that is the link for the Willy Bragg Show on YouTube. So check us out tomorrow. And if there's a problem on YouTube, come back to this channel here on Twitch, and we'll see what happens. So either way, there will be something either on Twitch or YouTube. And hopefully it will be on both forums in the next couple of days, and hopefully on Rumble very soon as well. Let me get back to me for a moment, because we have a chat line, and then I'll conclude with the program there. So let's start with the chat line. It's kind of a long chat line, but we'll start with PHS Cisco. Bree wasted her time. There's no point to reasoning with someone who's a dishonest actor like Cenk. Very, very, very true. I absolutely agree. Propaganda Live says, how about Caleb Maupin exploitation of 2 females into prostitution? Yeah, that's quite some drama that's going on there. That's really fucked up. What happened with Caleb Maupin, what's going on. So I'm going to try to do a discussion on the whole CPI thing, and I have my opinions on this whole patriotic socialism thing and all of that, but I'll go more in depth about it. I know people. I've known people that known Caleb over the years. I never met him, but suffice to say, Workers' World Party is not exactly my ideological bag of tea, but I'm not bashing. I'm just saying that was not exactly the path I took, but I remember him from his Workers' World Party's days, and he's actually did a forum where he was discrediting the right-wing argument about leftists being Nazis, and he did a very eloquent job. It was like 2009, 2010, something like that. And I can't take that away from him. But it's kind of fucked what happened, shall I say. So, but anyway, I'll talk about that as the time moves on. Let's see here. We got, oh yes, at least he was able to further expose what a piece of shit Cenk is. That's the only real benefit to this conversation. Yeah, it was Cenk at its lowest. It really was. Let's see. Yeah, and I basically, as I was responding earlier, but that I lost respect for Cenk already because of his refusal to go with forced to vote. That was really the beginning of the end. I was kind of frustrated with Young Turks, but that really was a red flag right there for me. It really was. Let's see. Yeah, forced to vote was the end of my support for TYT. He would have won me back a bit if he had dropped his ego, but of course he couldn't do that. He's got great health care. Yes, a lot of these people have great health care, and when you have great health care, you tend not to care about others. That's just kind of how it is. I mean, and everybody ought to have health care. It shouldn't even be an issue in this country, especially now. I mean, it ought to not be an issue. I think Cenk is secretly in love with Jimmy. I think that some of these people who are obsessed with Jimmy Dore might be. Let's see. Not sure why targeting the party in power is right-wing stance, especially when that party is no better than Trump years, except in their rhetorical lip service. Very true, because those kids in cages didn't care whether the president was Trump or Obama or Biden. And those kids in cages, that shit started under Obama. And, hope and change, the drone strikes got aggressive under Obama, I guess it's a alternative to boots on the ground and all of that, but still, it's just innocent people are dying because of the drone strikes. And that's just as much a war crime as sending troops on ground troops as they did in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, and it continued under Obama, continued under Trump, and it's continuing right now under Biden. Let's see. Shalansky writes, public office means public recognition. If they expect not to sacrifice some measure of public anonymity, they need to expect another job. Well said. I am 100% with you against physical interactions, but trolling and speaking their minds is well within the rights of the people. Absolutely. And I just wanted to make that point out because, I would definitely be against harassing somebody physically. That's just something that I've always been against. But annoying the shit out of them. I'm all for annoying the shit out of people. I used to call in local right-wing radio talk shows just to annoy the shit out of them. It makes for great comedy. Cenk is a 52-year-old man baby. Tell me about it. He really is. He really is. The FBI is actually doing something right, quote unquote. Let's see, it's probably worth asking, why do we assume the FBI is capable of doing anything right after decades of malevolence? Very true, considering what's happened to MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and, think about COINTELPRO. The late David McReynolds once said that when he joined the Socialist Party of America in 1951, how many leftist organizations existed? He said there was the Socialist Party, there was the Social Democratic Federation, the Socialist Labor Party, the Socialist Workers Party, the IWW, the Communist Party, the Jewish Labor Bund. What else? The Independent Socialist League. Pretty much that was it. About 8 major organizations that were defined as the left back in 1951. I remember this conversation. And by the end of the 1960s, it became an alphabet soup of hundreds of organizations. And now you get 4 or 5 people finding some new revolutionary group that they think is going to be the next stage of the revolution. The FBI has done this shit over the decades. They know what they're doing. So let's see here. Jordan Sheridan on Twitter said it was common sense to praise the FBI for holding corruption to account. I replied, where's the common sense in a corrupt organization holding corruption to account? And I personally favor abolishing the FBI. It's just some of the practices they use are anti-civil liberties and all of that. And I personally favor having it abolished. Briahna Joy Gray is, by all measures, a far better person than Cenk. Yes, she is. And he brought her to the show to prove it. Should we be thanking him? Oh, I had no doubt that she was a better person. But I've always liked Briahna Joy Gray from the first time I've heard of her. And why people on the left, some people on the left hate her is beyond me. It really is beyond me. And why they think that Cenk is a rock star is beyond me too. I mean, he sounds so disingenuous. He sounds less genuine the more I hear him these days. I have personally witnessed Jimmy pull some of my family members further left over the last year. Yep. Honestly, I don't. I there is a program, Middle America with Venezuela, and the host is an African American man who's, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he is a Christian. He's still pro-life, but he used to be a Republican, part of the Christian right, and he got shifted toward the left. And Jimmy Dore helped him shift toward the left, and he became a Bernie Sanders supporter by 2016. And he says on the show, "We're not left and we're not right. We're just right." I mean, I know what he meant by that. And he's got a pretty interesting program too. If you ever get a chance to check it out. Middle America with Venezuela. So sorry. So anyway, I will go and get back to my words, and we will take it from there. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. If you disagree, comment anyway. We will have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, is my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. Hit that subscribe button, and remember to reject corporate media, because they have absolutely nothing at all to offer us. And always support independent media, and do what you can to make a difference in our society, and so until next time, I will leave you all with, of course, music. Take care.